Hey, very good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. My name is Sean.
This is Alex.
And you are listening to another episode of Coaster Kings Radio. Today, first things first, you may have noticed we've been gone.
Yes.
And that's because we were in Europe for a little bit.
We had a good-ass time.
We had a wonderful, cute time. I mean, first time international since
cute time.
The pandemic started.
Wonder bar.
We went to France right as the pandemic started, and the school shut down in England, and Italy was dying. It was pretty rough.
February 29th, 2020.
So it was right before all the borders closed.
Yeah.
And we hadn't been back since. So yeah, that was where we were. We were in Europe. It was a quick week. And now we're just kind of catching up with work, and we're moving soon, so we have our house full of boxes, and so we hadn't gotten a chance really to record these newer episodes, but here we are, and today we'll be talking about Bobbejaanland. So we did 8 parks, 4 countries, 5 days. It was a really quick, crazy lightning trip. Shout out to Sven, who's not here recording today. He actually drove us around for part of that.
Sven is our savior.
Our Lord and
He's
Savior.
Our everything.
So we will have an episode about most parks, but today's focus is Bobbejaanland, which is the first of the episodes here.
It was the first of our new parks.
Yeah, so of course we flew to Paris, and then the first thing we did
straight to Disneyland.
Was Disneyland Paris
immediately,
obviously. And then that evening, Sven surprised us in the parks that he got a season pass,
great.
And so then we went back home with Sven, and then after that, the next morning we started our Belgium trip, which we hadn't done any Belgian parks yet. We started that.
So exciting! It was
with Bobbejaanland.
Fabulous to cross another country off the list of cross another country off the list of countries that we've ridden roller coasters in. So that was awesome. Bobbejaanland is just that's what I think of when I think of Belgian theme parks. I guess that was the first.
It's like the mix between Slagharen and Dollywood.
Yeah.
They had a love child.
Yeah.
They would have Bobbejaanland.
That's such an odd combination, but it checks out. Because I wouldn't say that it necessarily resembles Dollywood that much, except that on paper, it's the same story.
So long story short, Bobbejaanland is a Belgian country singer, and he was like, wow, this piece of wetland looks really great to build a show venue so we can have performers from all over the world.
Classic.
Do artist things. And so that was really cute, but then it took maybe 15 years, and they decided that, because the park opened in 1961 as a show venue, really, and then in 1975, they decided it was actually time to turn it into a real theme park. So it's 15 years later. And so actually the reason they turned it into a real theme park is because the owner of Phantasialand back in the day was friends with Bobbejaanland and advised him to turn into a theme park industry instead of just shows, because it was more profitable. Yeah. Very similar history to Phantasialand. And that's how in 1975 Bobbejaanland became an actual theme park. Alright, so the important part here is that Bobbejaanland is a country artist, and the original theme, so many European parks, is the American West.
Yeah.
So it was just country artist goes theme park, and even though he did it way before Dollywood was a thing,
the Dolly Parton
it just kind of feels like, Belgium's version, even though it's the OG,
I just never would have thought in a million years that there was another amusement park that was started by a country music tycoon who just really felt like having a theme park with their name on it. It's just funny. Yeah. One of those things, if I had a nickel for every time this happened, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't very many, but it's still weird that it happened twice. And if you can tell me what show I'm referencing, then you're really cool.
Anywho's, so we got into Bobbejaanland. Very cute approach, very minimal.
It's so cute and quaint. The entrance of this park, unlike Dollywood, which has changed the entrance of their park 5 times, Bobbejaanland's just got the most adorable little point of sale and turnstiles, and it's a quaint little courtyard, I guess, of shops and things, and then it's rides immediately. Typhoon is right there on the doorstep.
Should we just go around the park, and should we start with the Land of Legends?
Land of Legends is really cool. I think it's neat the way that they added a new ride and brought with this new ride a whole refreshing of the frontmost area of the park that actually has coasters and stuff. Because you've got the Sledgehammer, which is the Husk Giant Frisbee, and of course the iconic Typhoon Gerstlauer Eurofighter serving as like major components to this new area and getting rethemed in a way that complements the new ride Fury quite nicely.
So yeah, what happened is in 2019 the park added a Gerstlauer Infinity Coaster, which we'll talk about in a couple minutes. But in order to do that, they kind of needed to spruce up the front side of the park because Typhoon really wasn't nicely landscaped or anything. It was quite honestly a bit bare. And then they had Sledgehammer, which was also added in the early 2000s. And so they came up with the idea of taking the 4 elements, earth, fire, water, and air, and getting an attraction for each of them. So Typhoon obviously got air, which they kind of refurbished it a little bit to be more mythical. Yeah, so they added some like scenery pieces that I guess Typhoon is some sort of like sky carriage being pulled by a hippogriff of sorts?
Pegasus-ish thing?
Well, it had a beak.
That,
so like,
or like a griffin type thing.
Yeah.
I just like that this ride. I mean, it was just plopped right on the ground, and the entrance and exit were pretty unceremonious in the beginning. But then they rerouted the entrance to be next to the entrance of Fury and Sledgehammer for this lovely little rotunda of all 4 elements and their respective attraction entrances. So really, like, they gave this ride a whole backstory. I mean, this park has been they haven't hesitated to change a ride's entire identity.
This
to
is
give
the
it
park
a themed
who
background.
like changes identities
because 3 of their coasters have completely not only different themes but different names entirely since they opened. So I kind of like that they were able to keep Typhoon and keep its name intact, and instead of just like completely giving it a new story, they were able to plug it back into the Land of Legends. Like, look at this picture. So, like, this is what the entrance used to be. I mean, you literally just walk up to it. It was like the ride's almost set up in like a fairground style, where it's like a little box with like a steel lattice footer system with like weights and stuff on it. I mean, this ride is very compact. In fact, it was designed to be like a major production model for Gerstlauer, but this ended up being the only one that they sold.
Fun fact about Typhoon, while we're on the topic, Typhoon actually replaced a Schwarzkopf looping star, speaking of similarities to Slagharen.
Yeah.
And in order to kind of pay homage to the original loop structure, the infamous box track vertical loops, they actually built a box support system for Typhoon's first loop, which is iconic.
And
it's
then
like
gave it
super
the little
iconic
logo over the top of the loop.
Exactly, and put the ride's name on top of the loop, which is a standard thing for the old looping stars. Yeah. So that was really cool. But so they gave it a new
griffin carriage thing. I don't know, it's just cute. It's cute that they are. Yeah. No, you're right. It's a hippogriff.
And so the theme, I guess, is that
they gave the ride a whole backstory just based on its name.
Right. And theme that it's air. So yeah, Sledgehammer obviously is Earth. We didn't even ride Sledgehammer. We kind of focused on some other attractions.
It looks great. It has a nice presence to it.
And of course, Fury is fire. And then there's a water play area.
The spray ground is really cute.
With a giant basilisk snake-looking thing.
Yeah.
It sounds a whole lot of Harry Potter over here. Yeah. But that's just the best way to describe
mythical.
It, really.
Yeah.
Now, let's start with Typhoon. How did I think Typhoon ran? It is a early Eurofighter.
This is definitely a Generation 1 Eurofighter.
You will feel that it's a Generation 1 Eurofighter.
Especially if you're riding in the front, you'll get your ass kicked.
A little rough around the edges. Definitely bouncy. However, just like American Dream, Meadowlands, second row made the difference. It was much better in the second row, much smoother. And I lost my sunglasses on the ride.
The staff was really wonderful.
Shout out to Niels.
Yeah, Niels, one of the ride operators, offered us a second ride when we were disembarking, even though we were pretty dizzy from our first ride.
Yeah, because Typhoon was designed in such a way that it needs to be dispatched with at least six seats people filled, because
otherwise it'll valley.
The mid-course brake run after the loop is located a little too high up, which may be another reason why this production model has been sold.
Even looking at it in pictures, it's amazing how high up it's like taller than the loop.
Which is funny because with 6 people on board, you still got quite some air coming up there, and it's like quite a hairpin wild mouse turn. But
yeah, so we got another ride on it, and Belgium. We rode in the back row, and it was a much more pleasant experience. We were like, oh wow, okay, this is.
I actually really like the ride. I mean, it's very intense. It's much more intense than Eurofighters that came after, because this ride gives you 3 barrel rolls, a really strong vertical loop.
It's got a mid-course brake run that's like tilted on the side. It's funny.
The helices are intense.
It's a quirky ride.
So one of the elements that leads into the helices is like a giant slope drop, goes like a small version of Revolution.
It was funny. It reminded me
a really, really intense upward helix.
It seemed like something that Togo would do. Just like this barreling straight ramp drop into an upward helix. Or like when you hit that helix, the G-forces about knock the wind out of you. But it's just a funny ride. It's amazing. Like I remember when they built Typhoon,
very quirky,
and it already feels like a classic. Like this feels like their classic looper.
Because on paper you can be like, well, why would they build an Infinity Coaster next to a Eurofighter? They're like really hugging each other.
It's amazing. These rides,
there are like 100% completely
these rides
different attractions.
Couldn't possibly be less similar. It's kind of surreal that they were even designed by the same company. It's just a lovely little snapshot of how far Gerstlauer has come. Because Fury is everything, everything that Typhoon is not. It just feels exceptionally deliberate in its engineering. It's so clever. I believe it's the only roller coaster that uses both a swing launch and a swing brake. And it has a swing launch that's achieved by a turntable track switch, and then a swing brake run that is also achieved with a turntable track switch. And in between the swing launch and swing brake turntables is the station.
Which makes for an incredibly unique, marketable
super
trait,
novel.
Which is the fact that on Fury you have two queues in the station. One is for a guaranteed forwards ride, and then one is where you can choose among all the riders whether you want to go forwards or backwards. So if you were to queue up for that queue, you will get boarded on a train. Mm-hmm. On your restraint, there's a forward button and a backward button. Depending on the amount of people that press backwards, you may or may not go backwards. Now, most of the time, if you queue up for that queue, you're going to go backwards. Because people will queue up for that want to ride it backwards. I mean, I don't understand why anyone would queue up for the choose your ride if they want to go forward, and there's literally a forward queue. But it's still really nifty that you can choose. And it was awesome. I really enjoyed that ride backwards. And despite, I think I may agree with Alex here, is that forwards maybe a little bit better, is that it is just such a novelty to ride this badass new Infinity Coaster and do it all backwards.
We did our first ride backward because I guess we figured just in case... We wanted the backwards ride first, just in case we only got to ride it once that day, and it really was just super disorienting, but cool and just unique. And
the fun thing about this layout is all the elements are kind of like new elements. None of them are really. It's just a bunch of twisting tracks, and like there isn't like a set element. There isn't like a set vertical loop. Like even their vertical loop is very, like completely stretched out.
It has a nice flow to it. It's a very flowy ride. Reminded me a little bit of Monster at Adventureland in Iowa, but even still, only slight similarities. This ride really felt quite different from anything, especially the backwards ride. The forwards ride, I could feel like the Infinity Coaster sensibilities coming through a bit more, but that backwards ride, I'm like, I was riding it, I'm like, I don't even know what to compare this to. This is just really weird, but remarkable, and I just love Gerstlauer, and it's like hell or high water. Gerstlauer is going to sell you a roller coaster train with a lap bar on it that has some sort of button or peripheral interactive thing, just like the Gerstlauer is like in Japan, like Spin Runway and Gekion Live Coaster that have the video game buttons mounted to the lap bars. They're always going to try to offer some sort of peripheral component with the lap bar because they do, and that's something that's really quite unique to them, I think, in the industry. So it's a major selling point.
Another thing about Fury is that it's much bigger than you'd expect. It is 43 meters tall.
Yeah, it goes 76 miles per hour.
It is a fast roller coaster. It's
one of the fastest coasters in Europe.
Exactly. To make it into kilometers per hour, it's 106.6 kilometers an hour.
Yeah.
So the ride has some kick to it. It has some size to it. It has a giant inverted spike that is the tallest point of the ride, which you hang in for, whatever. If you're facing forwards or backwards, it's part of the swing launch.
Yeah.
And then you have a really impressive top hat. with his 180-degree turn on the way down. So overall, I think it was much better than I expected.
It's one of those rides.
Sure what to expect,
when you watch a video of it, it looks like the video sped up, but it's actually traveling that quickly. It's just a very squirrely.
It's also interesting to me
ride.
How incredibly versatile the Infinity line is, because you have rides like Kernen and Hang Time, and then you have Gold Rush and Saharen, and then you have Fury, and they're all so completely different.
It's so aptly named, the Infinity Coaster line. Oh, and another. You pointed this out when we were in the park, and I'm looking at your TikTok of the ride that you made just now, and I was reminded of two more things. A, this ride's little similarity with Hang Time is that it's got that floating support that connects the two loop pieces together. So there's the support connecting two pieces of track suspended in the air, not connected to any other support structure. And then the other, like, Saharen Infinity Coaster similarity is the way that both Saharen and Bobbejaanland have these infinity coasters with swing launches that navigate around a vintage Schwarzkopf monorail.
And they both have a really sharp top hat.
Violent.
Now, the funny thing is that Saharen's is smaller, but has a longer train of 5 cars. Is where
Saharen is a full circuit swing, so it does the swing launch and the swing brakes, but it's all one full circuit.
One train.
So 20 passenger, one train. And it's not the longest ride cycle. It operates the way like a Skyrocket 2 operates, fairly straightforward without any of like the bells and whistles as far as track switching goes, but it was a perfect fit for Saharen.
Now we're going to talk Parques Reunidos parks in the region while on the topic, which includes Movie Park Germany, Saharen, and Bobbejaanland. They all got swing launch coasters within like 2 or 3 years. Yeah. So my question for you is, how would you rank
the swing launchers?
The swing launchers. So Fury, this is real time because I haven't asked you this before. So
between Fury, Gold Rush, and Star Trek Operation Enterprise.
Yeah, you can do a whole package.
Oh my god. I think Star Trek is my favorite of the three because I just love that ride. I can't get enough of the pre-show sequence and like
that Borg cube.
The Borg cube. I'll just never it was just like surprise and delight. Like, and I feel like that ride, because of the way the train is situated, the only thing about Fury that I think it does not have that the other two Parques Reunidos Benelux swing launch coasters have is the train is short. On Fury, it's just a 3-car train, so you're not going to see much of a difference between your front and back seat rides other than just like the view. But I really loved riding Star Trek in the lead car for the top hat, but then riding in the back for the spike, the half twist spike on the swing.
Oh, totally.
Launch. So,
but I mean, even on Fury, I guess. Yeah, maybe it's not quite as noticeable.
It's just not as pronounced.
The train is so short.
And Gold Rush, because it has that 5-car train, I feel like there's definitely a whip crack sensation.
Yeah, especially off the top hat, one. And then the final.
Sitting in the last row is really something on that ride versus sitting in the front, because you get just nailed over the coming off of the top hat, and then you also you just get those crazy lateral, like horizontal twist motion with that last dive loop into the station. So that's the only thing that these coasters have that Fury doesn't, but Fury has everything else. It's taller, it's faster. It might be longer. I don't know if it's longer than Star Trek. Star Trek feels longer, but the proportions of Star Trek are smaller. So it could be one of those things.
Fury really is much larger. Gold Rush and Star Trek are very similar in size.
Yeah, Fury is like twice their dimensions, like when it comes to like the speed height factor, but not necessarily in length.
But I mean, either way, I think that the choice of Parques Reunidos to invest in having 3 of these swing launchers in an area, it was a smart move because they're all really, really good, and Fury is no exception.
Fury's just super cool.
It just feels very different, but then I think about all the other ones, and they're all kind of different, so I think that's so cool about the product line.
I also, going into Fury, I did not give the ride enough credit for the whole choosing forwards or backwards thing. Like, it just was like, oh, cool, that's cool that you can choose that. But then I thought about it, and I'm like, that's really something that's only achievable because of the double turntable setup, which is just brilliant. Like, I didn't
realize that it was only an option and then there was the guaranteed forwards queue, which I guess the
Kinda
guaranteed
makes
forward
sense.
queue makes sense because
Some people
how not family friendly is it to put someone on a train like there's no guarantee of them actually being able to use navigation?
Yeah, going into it, I was like, ooh, so there's going to be people who ride this shit backwards against their will, but apparently not. If you're afraid of riding it backward,
then you get
the forward queue. The ride operators can control it manually on each dispatch. If need be. Also, because it's 12 passengers per dispatch, theoretically, if there's a tie on the voting side, then it's randomized, according to Sven. So if it gets 6 forward votes and 6 backward votes, the ride chooses for you. Interesting,
I would
if true.
presume it would just be backwards.
I kind of thought so too, but I don't know.
I'm still surprised it isn't like go backwards or go forwards.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of understand that, like, the whole niftiness of it is like
being able to choose.
button.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, isn't this easy to do like a forwards line and backwards line?
I'm telling you, Gerslauer was determined to sell them the buttons on the lap bars because they're cool.
I mean, they are cool, and
they're
they're really high quality.
They're
too.
really they're chrome LED buttons that are like touch sensitive. They're not physical buttons, and they just light up and flash with your selection. So
yeah, Fury was great. But of course, there's so much more in the park to discover.
Yeah, Fury was like, oh, this is the coaster that you kind of come for.
This is the coaster that the coaster enthusiasts probably are like, oh yeah, I need to go and visit.
The funny thing about Bobbejaanland is Fury feels by far like the newest thing at the park, and then everything else in the park feels like it's between 20 and 30 years old.
Their classic collection is awesome. But
I guess I should say between 20 and 40 years old.
So
some of their stuff is quite old.
Let me preface this next statement with the fact that I love Fury. I thought Fury was awesome. I thought it was an actually spectacular coaster. But was it in my top 3 at the park? It actually wasn't, which is funny. Because no one's ever going to agree with me on this. But I guess I'll reveal my top 3 at the end of the episode. Next up, let's head to the next area over, which is called Adventure Valley. Adventure Valley is home to Naga Bay that opened as Diz back in, was it 09, 07?
Let me double check. Yeah, this is a custom Mauer spinner, which is
honestly
unassuming, small statured, beautifully landscaped, and we got 2 rides on it and just had a fabulous time. 2011.
2011, okay.
Was when it opened.
So Diz / Naga Bay now.
As Diz until 2016.
Then
the Adventure Valley area is a really interesting. It was sort of like a precursor to Land of Legends. Like what they did to carve out Adventure Valley around existing attractions and new attractions is like it was definitely an indicator of what they would end up doing for Land of Legends, and probably they'll continue that trend as they continue to expand the park and revitalize existing areas. But the 2 coasters in Adventure Valley, neither of them had themes that were related to each other. They were just pretty straightforward. But there was like the King Kong Huss flat ride, which is such a funny looking, goofy looking thing.
Yeah, if you haven't seen pictures of it, you have to go to thecoasterkings.com/Bobbejaanland and you will find out.
Yeah.
Like, it is a wild,
it's
but not so wild
funny
ride.
Thing. It looks more like it's really just a glorious audio animatronic that you can ride on.
And then they have something else that's really unique.
The indoor splash battle.
Which is the indoor splash battle, Banana Battle. Which, obviously, those 2 are very, like, jungly, King Kong-y. So what they did is they had Revolution, which you've probably heard of Revolution.
Everybody.
It's the 30-car train Vekoma Illusion Coaster. And it is... We'll go into what the ride is like, but I mean, anyway, that's right over there too.
And classic 80s.
That shares
vibes.
a building with Banana Battle.
Yeah.
So the whole area kind of like had an identity crisis.
Naga Bay was originally, like, when it was Diz, it was like in between
areas.
Typhoon and Adventure.
They actually relocated
Valley,
the entrance of it.
They rerouted the entrance
all the way to Adventure Valley. So you kind of have to pass by the whole ride just to get in line for the ride.
Yeah.
But I didn't mind it that much.
The exit will spit you out right in Land of Legends, but the entrance is threaded all the way over to, like, roughly the same plaza as King Kong. But yeah, it's just fun the way that they made their choices to, like, world build by adding new things as, like, kind of the focus, like the centerpiece, like they did with Fury, where it's like, okay, we're building Fury. We want everything around Fury to complement this new addition, so we're going to wrap some new skin around these rides, and that's exactly what they did with Naga Bay especially, but also Revolution, a.k.a. Mount Mara. Now, this ride is fans of Opryland. If anybody here has ever went to Opryland in Nashville, this is Chaos, albeit a shorter train version. Technically the same ride mechanically, except that Chaos had a 40-vehicle train.
Yeah, it added 5 on each side of the station.
So a theoretical dispatch of 80, potentially 80 passengers per dispatch on Chaos. This ride is just such a funny thing, and it is so weird in the best way, and absolutely, like, I was asking myself, like, why did they design this? But also one of those things where it's like, it's so magnificently strange, like, why question it? Just, like, be grateful. Don't ask questions, just enjoy. But this thing sits in this giant, like, trapezoidal prism-shaped box. The station is, like, 2 or 3 stories off the ground. You load into it, and it's just like this endless semicircle of air gates.
Air gates, yeah.
Leading to the vehicles. You can hear the music pulsating in the show building.
Well, the funny thing is, so when you get to the station, 9 times out of 10, you're going to come to the station without a train being there because it's in the show building.
There's one train.
But how it works is that the show building is imagine a cube. On the inside of the cube, on the inside walls of the cube, is a spiralish lift hill that like hugs the walls. Yeah. And then there is a trapezoidal like pyramid almost structure outside of the cube, which is where the gravity part of the ride is. So how the ride's set up, and you'll probably have to just look at pictures to kind of make sense of this, is that sorry, our cats are playing with the moving boxes, and it's really adorable. Move. Complete sidetrack. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so how it works?
You spiral up the inside, like the
whole point of the illusion is that the complete center of the building, the majority of the building, is actually not used. It's open because you have originally a screen on the floor and a screen on the ceiling. Yeah. The screen on the floor is gone now. It's a giant pit of hell, which is kind of cool. Whatever it is, a crack in the universe in the bottom.
Yeah, and then the ceiling. Is still like intact.
A screen. It's almost like Twilight Zone-ish kind of vibe.
It reminds me of, it's kind of like a circle vision type approach where, but instead of like casting panoramically in a circle, you have a giant screen on the ceiling with a tiny hole in it where the camera would project onto the giant bottom screen that in turn has a tiny hole in it in the center that projects onto the roof. So it really clever, totally. I think this ride was really ahead of its time, and for both of these parks, I mean, when Opryland built it, this was like their bid against the movie storytelling type attractions that were being built at Universal Studios parks, Disney parks. Like, it was these were expensive and thrilling and cinematic rides. But yeah, so it starts out innocently enough. You go on this spiral lift hill that's not unlike a Schwarzkopf speed racer type thing, except bigger.
Yeah, like very stretched out. And
a bit more boxy, and you're just enjoying the environment.
So yeah, I think the greatest thing is that it's like a little dark ride within, and then with the roller coaster finale,
and you slither into.
Well, before we get to the top, I want to talk a little bit about the projection. So it's very 80s. It's like little concepts of time.
Does everyone remember that iconic like Apple Macintosh commercial with the sledgehammer that the person throws into the giant screen? It's a lot like that, but a ride.
And then so clocks and time.
There's
and
like
concepts.
Some Back to the Future vibes.
And then
like
suddenly, when the train gets like the final helix or like the final turn,
it gets to the top.
It starts getting almost like classic like 80s Tron.
Yeah, thumpy.
And there's like
house music,
electro music, and then all of a sudden like the train starts picking up speed because then it starts going down the exterior of those walls. Yeah, which is honestly just a bunch of waving drops.
If you're wondering, this entire ride is just a series of left turns. So you have like the interior lift hill coil, and then an exterior dropping sequence coil where really it's just one large wavy like magic carpet ride back down to the ground, continued left turns that are encircling the left turn coil.
And then the very last thing you do before the brake run is you pop back in to the cube that's in the center.
Yeah.
And you have a giant helix.
Yeah.
That goes around what used to be the bottom screen.
Yeah.
Now it's like that weird void in the universe.
Well, but it's not even that big of a helix. The funny, it feels like it's probably bigger than it seems, but this giant
it
train
is a big
wraps
helix
around
because the whole train fits in it.
Yeah.
But the train is so incredibly
But
long.
you're going
That's
so
why it's
fast.
a giant helix.
It's a fabulous finale. Like doing one last lap around inside of the big screen room thing. So,
but I think the funniest thing about that is that the ride, it doesn't do a whole lot. Like, it really is just that giant, the lift hill, and that has the show sequence, and then the drops down have a couple of effects that are kind of old light effects that are nothing spectacular, and then you have the final helix, which is pretty fast.
But if you're in the back of the
train, the ride ends mid-helix.
Yeah,
if you're in the front of the train, you have a whole ride after that still, because the train's so long that when you're in the front and you come off the lift, like the first 2 drops, you don't feel anything. You just kind of wait for the rest of the train to be there.
Yeah, front and back, as you might imagine, for a ride,
completely different.
A ride with a train this long, your front train ride and your back train ride are going to be very different, and
I can't even pick a favorite.
You have to ride it twice,
because the thing is, in the front row, that final helix has so much speed to it, you get rushed through it, but you also don't see the whole roof sequence because you already entered the drop sequence.
If I had to pick,
like 20
I would
seconds
pick probably
before.
the back, because I love sitting in the back of this 30 vehicle train
and seeing it do the whole thing. Yeah, I agree.
There was something really satisfying about, if you're in the back of the train, you enter that helix as the lead car is exiting, and for a brief moment you see the entire train lovingly wrapped around the floor of this show building like a scarf. It's just, everything about this ride, it just keeps getting weirder and funnier, and it just, I couldn't get enough.
It's funny because you go to Bobbejaanland for Fury, but you stay for Revolution. Revolution is my, by far, favorite attraction.
Yeah,
it is like a gem. It is so unique.
Late 80s fever dream. It's just too good to be true. Like, I just can't believe.
I know. I wish it was closer. I wish it was easier to.
I can't believe this ride was built. And
I would get a pass just for that ride.
And growing up in Nashville, people talked about Chaos, and now I get it. This ride still runs the same film program and music program that Chaos ran. It was standard, developed by Vekoma for this ride. So there were only 2 built, and they both had the same general vibe, at least when they opened. Chaos, Opryland was struggling with money pretty much for the entire 90s, so Chaos didn't exactly get maintained as well as it deserved for most of its life cycle. But for the most part, I've heard many fond recollections of Chaos, and to my understanding, the way that Revolution currently operates is pretty close to the Opryland version. So it makes sense to me that, like, Nashvillians struggled to articulate what it was about Chaos that was so interesting and cool. And some wouldn't even liken it to a roller coaster as much as something else. And the ride really just defies categorization. Like, is it a coaster? I mean, it's a coaster, but it's also a dark ride. It's also kind of a show. Like, it's like a nighttime spectacular inside of a box. Like, there's just so much about this ride. It is just an absolute, like, this is the stuff. What I got off this ride, and the thing that I said to myself and to everyone we left, I was like, this is what we travel for. Like, this kind of ride is what makes us plan trips to places.
These are the kind of rides that you skip kitty credits for because you're like, girl, I gotta ride that again.
Even though Fury is like beautiful, hot, new, I'm like, well, you can still find, like, they're still gonna build. Gerstlauer is gonna keep building rides like Fury. We're never gonna see another Revolution. We're never gonna see another Vekoma Illusion. Like, it's just a miracle.
Die for another Vekoma
It's just
Illusion.
An absolute miracle that this ride was ever built and sold. Let alone that they built and sold 2 of them. So I was just in awe of this 32-year-old contraption that has a huge cult following. Like, Bobbejaanland knows what they've got. That ride is extraordinarily well loved by the locals, including, like, our friend Timo, who has, like, his own Vekoma Revolution.
There's actually
there's a whole Discord.
I'm actually part of it now.
That Timo is in.
I'm part of it now,
and
too.
And Sean is in it, too.
It's a Belgian/Dutch Discord that's
just literally
purely dedicated to the Vekoma Illusion / Revolution of Bobbejaanland. I mean, I like how we filled up so much of the episode already with these coasters. And Anywho, that is the focus for sure.
We talked about 4 of them already. We talked about Naga Bay some more.
Yeah, let's talk about Naga Bay.
Naga Bay is really beautifully landscaped. That was the big takeaway for me.
It's located on the water, so half the ride kind of spins over the water, half the ride kind of goes through a bit of a forest.
Several of the coasters in this park are suspended over water.
I think the coolest thing about that ride is that the layout is so unique. It is a weird layout. It is a pretty tall spinner.
And it's smoother than the average Mauer spinner
completely
because of the
layout.
track bed. The track bed is so
very bulky.
Beefy.
Quite some spinning on it. Yeah, that was one of the biggest surprises.
Sven really undersold it.
Yeah, he like, really thought
because it's not Tarantura in Madrid. He was like, well, it's not what it could be. And
it wasn't Winges.
I really liked it a lot.
No hate, but I like it better than Winges. Because then we rode Winges like 2 years later.
We did not get the best ride on Winges. Winges is struggling a little bit. It's time for maybe a 20-year refresh on the whole Woos land. But we'll get to that in another episode.
Woos-a-town, yeah.
Woos-town, yeah. Land of the Woos. I don't even know.
Of the was.
Woos. Land of the was.
Anywho, ow.
You okay there, Buckaroo?
Anywho, our new Woos.
Okay, so the coaster that I was the most excited about coming into this was the rare and lovely Vekoma swinging turns.
So for anyone, so y'all know Roller Coaster Tycoon. I know y'all do.
Yeah.
Okay, and so Roller Coaster Tycoon has the infamous airplane vehicles
for the suspended
swing coasters, which are even funner in Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 because you can play around with them.
Yeah.
And they actually existed on a singular roller coaster.
Bobbejaanland is who we have to thank for the airplane vehicles on Roller Coaster Tycoon.
They were real, and they ran from its opening year in 1987 all the way to 2006. So coexisted with Typhoon for 2 years, which I didn't realize till I wrote the report.
I guess 3 years.
2 seasons, I guess, that they cooperated. Because it opened as Dreamcatcher in 2006. Which had a repaint of teal and pink supports with yellow track and a bunch of
coaster.
Dreamcatchers.
So Dreamcatcher is a indigenous themed coaster now. The main focus of the retheme wasn't just the major change in aesthetic, but the suspended vehicles from Vekoma. The airplane coasters, there was only 3 Vekoma swinging turns coasters ever built.
When it reopened in 2006 as Dreamcatcher, it was a little more stereotypical because it was like giant teepees and totem poles and a bunch of Dreamcatchers.
Yeah.
The aesthetic was cool, but it was a little more stereotypical.
Yeah.
And so what they
this is part of their Wild West area, which I'm just glad to see an e-ticket ride themed to, that culture instead of just it all being cowboys. But
and so in recent years they went more towards an aesthetic, cleaner, less stereotypical
more
approach,
naturalistic approach,
which is a station that's like rock work and more naturalistic, and then a pond you have to cross over to get inside the queue for the ride.
The queue is quite lovely.
The ride itself is just a very clean black/dark gray supports and track with a bright yellow swinging train. It's actually one of the prettiest, most clean looking rides despite its old age.
It's almost completely suspended over water, which is really quite lovely.
And the swing was way better than I expected. The layout itself was not custom.
We rode in the front.
But it has so you get off the lift, and then you have a bit of a turn, a bit of a straightaway, and then you have a zigzag or like an S-turn that kind of lowers and goes up again with the track height.
Yeah.
And then you have a giant turnaround that is like one of the biggest swinging moments.
A big U-turn.
And after that, you just kind of coast through 3 helices.
Yeah.
And between each of which you go back up again.
And they alternate directions.
And they alternate directions.
All downward helixes that alternate directions with like little pops in between them.
It was a really good ride. I really enjoyed it.
We rode it in the front seat. Totally worth it.
Definitely a can't miss.
Just really unique. Yeah.
And the oldest coaster of Bobbejaanland.
Like you said, the Vekoma swinging turns is a production model. There was never a custom one. It was a partnership with Aerodynamics, like many of the Vekoma 80s projects, where Vekoma handled this production model version of the Aero suspended coaster,
and
where Aero handled all the custom ones. So any park that wanted this Vekoma swinging turns layout just fits neatly in a little box. They sold 3 of them. All 3 of them are still open. The other one,
Grampus Jet,
is
themed to
Grampus
Killer
Jet.
Whales.
which has Orca-themed aerodynamics vehicles, and then there's, I believe it's called Centrifuge. It's in Thailand now. It originally opened in Australia. It was relocated. The Thailand Swinging Turns also has the floorless trains. So 2 of the Vekoma Swinging Turns have the Vekoma floorless trains, even though all of them opened with aerodynamics trains, and now only Grandpa's Jet has them. And then, of course, you have the Aero suspended coaster in Great Britain at Chessington that has the Vekoma trains. I love the Vekoma trains. I think they're quite fun and lovely, and it adds a lot to be able to see below you. I dream of Ninja at Magic Mountain receiving these trains, but there's also people who would oppose that because the trains are much more lightweight, which on the one hand is great for maintaining the health of the track spine and keeping the track bed from fatiguing prematurely. But because they're so much lighter weight, they don't swing as much. I don't think the Swinging Turns coaster, like, I'm pretty sure Grandpa's Jet is still like the biggest when it comes to swing factor because it still has the old Aero trains. So with Ninja, it would be kind of maybe a little bittersweet because I'm just so attached to the Aero rolling stock and the way that they look and like exactly some of those turns, like you really do hit 90 degrees. So that's something that we would lose if we got floorless trains on Ninja. However, riding Dreamcatcher, I mean, I'm a huge fan of Vampire at Chessington. That's probably my favorite coaster in Great Britain, to be honest with you. And then riding Dreamcatcher, I'm like, yeah, these trains are dope. Like, I really love.
And the ride was really smooth.
Openness.
I know that the idea of some of these Vekoma suspended swinging trains, especially from the kiddie coaster versions where they're static.
Oh yeah.
People associated with a little bit with like the headaches, like the Cedar Fair kiddie coasters.
Yeah.
But since it's all swinging, it was an incredibly smooth ride. The pacing was great. I mean, the thing didn't stop for a second. And even some suspended swing coasters have a bit of a pacing issue. I mean, Ninja is guilty of it. Ninja's pacing is far from perfect.
I mean, it may not be saying much, but like I really enjoyed this ride, and I would definitely take it over like Iron Dragon, first of all.
God, Iron Dragon.
I don't know if I would necessarily take it over any of the other custom Vekoma suspended coasters, but it's definitely like a satisfying ride for what it is, and I do find it a shame that they didn't sell more of them. I would have loved to have had one of these like production model Vekoma suspended coasters in the U.S.
I also would have think it
somewhere.
would have been fun if Vekoma designed custom versions. Not Aero is dead, but I'm not sure how much longevity that product line has. Anywho, then next door. There is this thing called Kinderland, which is really scary. It's an indoor.
I call it Clown Town.
It's pretty much a Halloween haunt, which it has been used as a Halloween haunt, and it still kind of feels that even during the day. It's just very classic European clown-themed kiddie area.
I feel like in America, you can only use clowns unironically now. Like, or ironically, you can only use them. Like, clowns are only scary. Like, it's ironic the way that we use them because of cultural things like it.
Joker,
like all of the clown media in the United States is dark and spooky. Whereas in Europe, you still see a lot of clown stuff, like unironically, where it's
most
still
of them
for
old
kids.
age. It's obviously also kind of becoming a little creepier. But they have a clown coaster called Okie Dokie.
Outside of the indoor Clown Town, you have the Clown Town coaster.
And Okie Dokie is a custom Vekoma Junior coaster.
It was the first
to have the new trains with the individual lap bars. The layout's actually fire. Like, it's a great layout. The airtime on that first drop is scarily good.
It's not quite long enough for the 2-train operations that they are trying their very best for, I feel. But it's also a long train. Bad. It's also a long train.
I appreciated the 2 trains because that line was long and it moved. Like, we got on pretty quick despite.
But yeah, it's a cool ride. This park is just full of like interesting Vekomas because we've got like 4 one-of-a-kind Vekoma rides here. We'll get to the 4th one in a bit. But yeah, Okie Dokie was cute. That side of the park is the side that is really close to the residential area. So like if you look at the park like vertically, you'd have like the right side of the park that has like a vast majority of the signature rides. It's got Land of Legends, it's got Adventure Valley, it's got the Wild West area that includes Dreamcatcher and the Wild Mouse, which we actually skipped due to time constraints. That's a vast majority of like the park's attractions, and on the left side of the park you have the indoor clown area, and then you have the indoor shooting dark ride and the indoor log flume, and there's this theme of indoor rides because it's
right next to residential area. It's just
area.
Like the Hollywood the Hollywood tour, boat tour, and Temple to Lift Hill and Bobbejaanland, for example. But yeah, so that coaster's good. It was fun. What was even more fun was the indoor log ride that was right next to it, Indiana River.
The park has 2 Intamin log flumes, a traditional outdoor log flume that opened in 1980, and then Indiana River, which is a completely enclosed dark ride log flume that opened in 1991. Totally not sure what to expect, but
it's funny because it fits in with the Western theme, yet it totally has like a bayou/jungle vibe
this
to
ride
it.
100% coasted on like the Indiana Jones fever. That's why it's called Indiana River, even though it doesn't have anything to do with Indiana, the state of Indiana. It's all about Indiana Jones. So it's very Raiders of the Lost Ark aesthetic, which like how could you resist? I mean, even this opened the same year as Adventure Express at Kings Island. Like,
I mean, the cool
Indiana
thing
Jones
about this
fever was taking over the world.
Is that it's just a giant show building, and they build a full-size log flume inside of it, and they just put a bunch of like jungle theming and netting in there.
Lots of little scenes. Like Sven told us to lower our expectations, which I did, but I was like, I wrote it, and I was like, I love everything about this. Everything about it was
adorable.
Wonderful.
There's a lot of rock work and some special effects and theming,
and it's a little rough around the edges, but you know what? I just wouldn't change a thing about it.
Anyway,
it's just, I mean, it's just a real treat. Like. Totally, it feels a lot like Revolution for me, where it's like, wow, you're not going to get this anywhere else in the world. You're not going to get something that feels quite like this in another park. So that was wonderful. The other log flume was fine. It wasn't like anything crazy. But really, the highlight of the outdoor log flume was the very lengthy custom Mack Blauer Ensign that wraps around.
Yeah, the power
the
coaster
outdoor log flume
was added in 2000, so 20 years after the log flume, but it completely is
snakes around it.
It is like incorporated with the log flume, so they're like the power duo of that park. Yeah. They have been using all the marketing when I was a kid. It was those 2 rides were like Bobbejaanland. They're on the lake, so they're both over water. But it was a really good power coaster. Probably my favorite power coaster. Really, it was really fucking
just like
good.
Dreamcatcher, a vast majority of the ride is literally suspended over water, so. You couldn't ask for like a better setting setup.
And long train, as most of them. So I really enjoyed that. And what else?
Next to Indiana River and Bob Express, you have the El Paso Special.
The El Paso Special is very special.
Very special.
Let's just say we couldn't do this in the U.S.
I
guess
it's
just a bloodbath.
Just want to say, like, this is the original. It claims to be the oldest shooting dark ride. It's from the 1980s. It is a lengthy dark ride where you sit in these like lacquered park benches that roll through various historic scenes. First, it's like you're rolling through Mexico, you're rolling through Texas, like, and the whole the shooting aspect of it. There's no scoring. You're literally just using these very realistic looking pistols to like trigger the audio animatronics in the scenes. And so you're literally just riding through on a park bench, like massacring these towns.
So like, and it's rough because there's a bunch of indigenous people that you're just like shooting.
Yeah.
I mean, that's how the ride starts. It starts with a lot of indigenous people that you're shooting.
Mexicans.
And like
Native Americans.
Women and Native Americans, and then eventually start shooting.
And then you start shooting Confederate soldiers.
So like you end up shooting everyone.
Then I was like, okay,
still weird vibes though.
Yeah, first I was like, oh, this is like
it
not aging
aged
well. And then once we started shooting the Confederate soldiers, I felt better about it. I was like, okay, that is
the grand finale.
That is at the end of the ride. It's like the saving the best for last.
And the funny thing is like the majority of the audience there has no clue. Like they don't know the indigenous struggle in the United States, and they probably it aged so well for the locale because people just don't think too much about it.
I still just don't understand like
from a U.S. standpoint,
the premise. Like I don't know who we are. Like I don't know what we're like. Are we the Grim Reaper? Like we are just rolling into these towns. I don't think it's that deep. It's really not.
It's not that deep.
It's so not.
We are nothing. We're just everyone's getting killed because the whole
ride
point of
is very simply a shooting gallery ride where you're just wasting the townspeople, and every time you shoot an audio animatronic, like it reacts in some way. Like the women with the dresses that they like, you shoot them and they spin around and make this like goofy. There's a really surreal like on the one hand, I'm like, oh, this is cringy and terrible, but then on the other hand, I'm like, this is like significant and should probably be preserved for the sake of conversation and thought provocation. But yeah, I felt really weird about it. But then by the time it was over, I'm like, okay, I didn't hate that. I think it could have been worse.
No, I look back with good memories.
Yeah.
It's just weird.
Ending on the high note with shooting the white people made me feel like, okay, this is a very indiscriminate massacre.
Yeah, it's not just
we're not just shooting
minorities.
Brown people. We're also shooting Americans, white Southerners, colonists. So it's like, okay, this is kind of level playing field, but still a weird fucking ride, like just super strange. But you can't miss it. Absolutely can't miss it. You got to ride this thing and be part of the conversation. You have to experience the El Paso special for yourself to believe it.
It's special.
It's special indeed.
And a couple more things before we wrap up the episode that the park has to offer. They have that monorail.
The monorail is super cool.
They have a really cool Ferris wheel with only 8. What do you call those things? 8 spikes.
Oh,
what do you call those things? Anyway, spokes.
I'm like looking at your bicycle on the patio. I'm like, it's whatever those things are.
So yeah, it's a Schwarzkopf giant wheel, but it has like way less spokes than any other giant wheel. That was kind of fun. It was raining like European rain.
It was very Belgium.
It was cold, and so we were freezing our ass up, but it was fun. Yeah. Got a cool view of all the rides.
Ironically, the area that we spent the least amount of time in is like the reason for the season. The Wild West area of the park is quite large and was very populated.
They have a really cool rapid ride there. It's called El Rio, and it's a double level rapid ride that is infamous for having one of those like giant whirlpool like drops.
It was like the first whirlpool.
It is a really cool rapid ride. We didn't ride it because it was just cold and it was raining.
Yeah. And we had already got the other two the log flumes took priority.
Pretty wet already.
And so we were like, all right, we're good.
And then we also skipped the Wild Mouse because the line was long. We've all been on Wild Mice before, but what we actually did ride instead.
The Wild Mouse is it used to be iconic because they had 2 Wild Mouse coasters from Mac.
Speedy Bop.
They were mirror images of each other. And then they sent a Wild Mouse to what was the park that they sent it to? Merlisab or one of those places.
No, Merlisab got the one from Bobbejaanland unrelated.
That's right.
That was fine. That's from Gold Mine. They sent this to another park. It's Guineos Park. What's the park that Attracciones?
They sent it to another park. And they just left the spot where the other Wild Mouse was. They just left it like vacant.
It's still vacant right now.
So cool looking. Like pictures of it from the Ferris wheel, like this double. It was such an aesthetic.
Wild Mouse, yeah.
And even the entrance and queue setup, like very much would reflect a 2-train or a two ride operation. We walked up to it and saw the line. The line was probably at least 45 minutes, and we're like, no, like we're not, because we were going to another park, so we were like...
I mean, we spent a good 5-6 hours at Bobbejaanland, but we also had another park still that evening.
Yeah.
That was open really late that we were going to go to.
And we were like, well, we passed it by because we just didn't feel like bothering with the mouse, but we still wanted to walk around the whole Wild West area and take pictures.
And then we
discovered...
Pedalo Horse. Which is a Vekoma bicycle coaster.
Yeah, Vekoma monorail cycle.
Word. But yeah, so you would cycle yourself down a track. However, it was at a decent slope and it had just rained.
So we rode a few
it became
of
like an
these
actual roller coaster
in Japan. Some of the cycle railways in Japan even have full drops, upward slopes, and block breaks. So we count quite a few of these as credits. But we take everything on a case-by-case basis when it comes to credits. But this thing, it was it just seemed really obvious that it was a credit. Because you go up the lift hill. It's a traditional chain lift with anti-rollbacks and whatnot. You crest the lift hill and there is this... You're supposed to pedal like a bicycle, but we didn't have to pedal.
In fact, we had to brake because it rained, so it was running really fast.
Yeah.
It was really fun,
It has a hand brake, so there's a little bit of a mountain coaster edge to it. But yeah, we just... glided around the Himalaya ride and over by Dreamcatcher and then back around and came into the brakes and we're like, yeah, I mean, that's a coaster for us. Some people will only count a credit if it has upward coasting, but there's plenty of coasters out there that don't coast upwards. That's not really something I concern myself with when thinking about credits. In fact, we have a whole episode about what's a credit.
Is it a credit or not?
Credit or not. where we talk about the cycle monorails in places like Japan. But I just loved this one in particular just because I wasn't expecting it. I had no idea this was there, and it was a much more satisfying experience. I mean, it was also a much shorter line than the Wild Mouse, but it was also like a much better use of our time. Like, even if I didn't count it as a credit, I still probably would have rather ridden it than the Wild Mouse, because the Wild Mouse is just a Wild Mouse, and this thing was like a unique oddball Vekoma attraction that like you won't really get anywhere else in Europe.
So that was actually that was definitely a highlight. But overall, the park setting is really cool because it has so much water. It has a giant central lagoon, very green. It's a very green park, like most European parks in that region because of the weather. But I really, really enjoyed the park. Like I said, Dollywood Sahara vibes. It was better than I expected, for sure. There's a lot of really unique stuff. I mean, Revolution, Indiana River, what's it called? Dreamcatcher. Those are three things that stand out to me. I'm like, wow, those are so unique.
Okay, all of the Vekoma coasters.
You can only get that in Bobbejaanland.
Every coaster there is totally unique except for the Wild Mouse. So there's that.
Yeah. So overall, yeah, really, really good time. I look forward to going back. It's actually on my have to hit again list because Revolution and Dreamcatcher are that great.
Yeah.
So if it's not on your list, it really should be. Mm-hmm. It's one of the more polished, classic European parks.
There's something there for everyone. I beseech you to find me a coaster enthusiast that wouldn't place one of their coasters in like
a decent spot,
high place of honor. Like, if you don't like this place, then like I don't know what to tell you, because like there's just something for every type of coaster enthusiast. Unless you're like a wood coaster purist, but like Europe really isn't. Belgium's not gonna be your friend if you're traveling for wooden coasters, because they've got two. So
yeah,
if you like oddball steel coasters, Vekomas, classic oddball stuff from the 80s especially, and a hypercoaster sized backwards forwards launched infinity coaster that goes 76 miles per hour, this is the place for you. Like, you've got to go to this park.
And then without further ado, I wanted to present to you on thecoasterkings.com the Bobbejaanland article with lots of pictures. We had actually pretty good luck with pictures despite the weather being kind of rough.
Didn't you promise everyone you were going to tell them your top 3 for the park?
Oh my god, I should totally have presented that after my just random without further ado. Okay, so that's my top 3 in the park.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
Okay, yeah.
It's like, website plug, but that's important too.
Okay, you guess my top 3?
Well, Revolution is your number 1 of the day, obviously. Is this just coasters, or does it include non-coasters?
If it just, we can do either one.
Because, and Dreamcatcher is in your top 3, right? Is that number 2?
Yeah, it is.
And then what was your third favorite? Naga Bay?
Yeah.
And then Fury was Ford?
Yeah.
For coasters?
Naga Bay was that good. It was that surprisingly good. Nobody didn't give it that much attention, but there's not much to say besides, like, it just kicked some ass. Like, it was fun, it was different, it was good.
Again, the staff was really wonderful for that ride. The ride operators were so excited to let us ride again.
Oh, yeah,
getting re-rides on Naga Bay and Typhoon from the staff was like so wonderful, because A, that's like a huge gift to us, like so hospitable, so thoughtful, and B, both of these coasters have like exits that are really far from the entrance with like really long convoluted queues, like connecting them to their respective themed areas. So like re-riding these rides is also like kind of a pain in the butt because of the whole queue setup. So huge thank you to Bobbejaanland for that.
But yeah, for Naga Bay, one thing I want to say real quick is that drop, the second drop after the first mid-course, absolutely insane. Super intense. So good.
Yeah, both of our rides felt very different, but we were like, yeah, if I had this coaster in my backyard, I'd ride it all the freaking time. Like, super re-rideable, lots of fun.
If I had to do like top 3 overall rides though, it would be Revolution, Dreamcatcher, Indiana River.
That's mine too. I was going to say, for me,
those are just so Bobbejaanland.
The 2 80s Vekomas, like the 2 like signature Vekomas, and then the Indiana River. Indiana River was like the ride. Those were the 3 rides I was most excited about for the park, and then they all 3 totally delivered, like totally met or exceeded my expectations. So all in all, it was a great visit. I really look forward to going back. We're intently watching this park because we're very pleased with the direction they seem to be going in, with their newer additions like Fury. So we look forward to returning and getting some re-rides on these amazing coasters and seeing what they have in store for their future editions.
I look forward to it. And when it comes to our podcast episodes, this is the first of many for Europe, because we did a trip, of course, with all those parks. So we'll also have episodes for Plopstantepannen, Park Asterix, Bellewaerde. We'll do Efteling, Phantasialand, Disneyland Paris, all the good stuff. Join us on our next episodes, and have a great day.
Nighty night.
Bye.
Bye.